This is a topic where you got to make sure that you talk about things thoroughly, but at the same time, not making a 20-minute video. I'm an advocate for Premier Boxing Champions. I'm a fan of Premier Boxing Champions. Why? Because I'm a boxing fan. I've told you long ago, I don't agree with all the things that Al Haymon does or does not do. We don't know what he does because we don't see the man. But what I will say is this. As a reporter, as a YouTube blogger, as a future boxing promoter, I must say that we're getting boxing every week. And the fact that we're getting boxing every week, remember last year we were complaining for the lack of boxing and the lack of boxing matches. We're getting boxing on national television. So I read through the whole Top Rank Al Haymon lawsuit document. I read the entire thing. I understood the language, and it has some legs. But here's a question that I want to ask is, where would boxing be? Now follow me. Where would boxing be without Al Haymon? For example, a stable of over or around 200 fighters. What fights would we be watching? Where would Keith Thurman be? Where would Danny Garcia be? When you look at the WBC rankings for the heavyweight division, about 70% of those guys are Al Haymon guys, meaning the top 15. So it's things like that where I look like, okay, I understand that in boxing or in anything, period, there should not be a monopoly. Why? Because it creates an unfair competitive advantage. I understand all of that. There's a word or term that's been used in the document called brazen, B-R-A-Z-E-N, B-R-A-Z-E-N, yeah. Basically it means bold. Like you doing some crazy, oh, you just don't give a fuck. You know, like that type of situation. It's a tough situation to talk about because it's like this. I would love to see Peter Quillin versus Gennady Golovkin with no issues. But then again, it's like I'm a boxing fan who tells myself, oh, and I know it's true, oh, that fight can't happen because Peter Quillin is PBC and Golovkin is HBO. Or for example, you get a situation where you got a guy like Sergey Kovalev, who's the WBO, WBA, IBF, champion at 175 pounds, who was chasing Adonis Stevenson, who was very close to getting Adonis Stevenson on HBO. Adonis Stevenson leaves HBO, goes with Al Haymon. We thought it was Showtime, but he goes with Al Haymon. And that fight goes up in smoke to the point where finally the WBC orders Sergey Kovalev and Adonis Stevenson to fight. But guess what? Sergey Kovalev's side, money is not as long as Al Haymon's side. Sergey Kovalev is contractually obligated to HBO. So therefore, it would mess up Kovalev's money and HBO's money and Main Event's money, the promoter of Sergey Kovalev, to fight Adonis Stevenson, because of course Al Haymon would love to be able to throw some salt over on Team Kovalev and bring his ass over on the PBC. You know, so it's deep political boxing situations like that, to whereas, and if you don't know how the political landscape of boxing works, you can't really judge necessarily what's going on. For example, Al Haymon allegedly blocking venues. It's kind of, I didn't know it was illegal, you know? Of course he probably did, or they did, whatever the case may be, allegedly. But it would be something I would think like, yeah, well, if I'm putting on a boxing event in the Palm Springs in Vegas, I want to make sure I'm the only boxing event in town, you know, or anywhere around. So therefore, I don't want nobody fighting at the StubHub Center on that same date. And I guess I look at it like this. You got all these lawsuits popping out of everywhere. You have to think, well, you got Haymon Boxing, Haymon Sports, and his investing partners. They got to be hell of a confident to be pumping all that money into PBC. And if you don't know, they're losing money. But when you first start up a business, you're going to lose money. Things are not, you know, like good on TstreeT like you may think. But at the same time, understanding business, if you really, really understand business at the stage that PBC is in right now, it's all about domination for the future. So therefore, they may be losing money right now, but we don't know when their plan is or when their goal to start turning a profit. You thought they thought they was going to just hit the ground just running. It's not smart business to think that way. Just like right now, personal story of my own. Right now, TstreeT Controversy Live is transitioning into a boxing media promotional company along with RealCombatMedia.com. You think that I didn't know that things would be kind of slow around this time? You didn't, you know? It's just business, just things that you should know. So I look at it like this. I understand Golden Boy Promotions' stance with their lawsuit as far as Al Haymon just took all of their fighters. But whose fault was it if you really, really deeply look at it? With Richard Schaefer and Al Haymon was signing all these fighters up to Al Haymon contracts, but not Golden Boy contracts. Where was Oscar De La Hoya? You get me? So it's situations like that we gotta say, well, who's really to blame? When you look at Top Rank situation, Top Rank has been around for ages. Top Rank is a very organized company. Whatever you say about Top Rank Boxing, about, you know, Bob Arum is this and that, and they're a very, very structured company. Even when it comes to media credentials and their events, it's everything's done the right way. You know, that's why they were so upset with the way Mayweather Promotions was handling the promoting of the event and the tickets and things like that, because Mayweather Promotions or Al Haymon was in charge of promoting the event. Top Rank is in a situation where they're the #2 boxing company. Well, you got Haymon, PBC, and you got Top Rank, and then who else? I guess you would say after that, maybe Golden Boy in the main events. I don't know. You know, Gary Shaw, but you got Al Haymon, who's all the way up there with all the top talent. I'm talking about the top of the, you know, the top of the pyramid, and then you got all these other, you know, promotional companies that don't have nowhere near as large of a stable as Top Rank. Hell, you know what? I'm gonna say globally, the biggest promotional companies are Al Haymon, and then you got Top Rank, then you got maybe Matchroom, K2, Gary Shaw, Sarlin, but basically, long story short, is these other boxing promotional companies, they're getting pissed because they're finding it more difficult to put on competitive fights, because when it comes to the divisions and the sanctioning bodies, Al Haymon's fighters are set up, you know, to fight each other or fight for those belts, and keeping other guys, like, for example, a guy like Mauricio Herrera, who's a Golden Boy fighter, is going to have a tough time getting fights. Timothy Bradley, tough time getting fights. Jose Benavidez, you know, like things like that. Vasil Lomachenko. And it's things you got to think about, but then I think to myself, well, Al Haymon's got to make it easier for his fighters to fight other fighters. You know, I understand what they're trying to do, squeezing everybody out to the point where the fighters have no point but to sign with you. But the kitchen is getting hot. There's too many lawsuits flying around. I'm thinking like, all right, you know, he's fighting these things off with his karate, with his Jedi master, you know, lawyers. But at the same time, it's like, it's certain fights that we fans, we want to see, but we tell ourselves we can't see him because he's with such and such. He can't fight him because of this and that and this and that. Like, for example, Golovkin versus Erislandy Lara. I would love to see that fight, but fans get mixed up in the bullshit because they thinking like, you know, like, oh, GGG don't want to fight him. No, it's political. It's political. I am TstreeT Controversy with RealCombatMedia.com. This is TstreeT Controversy Live. I mean, it's a conflicting situation because I like getting boxing weekly, but at the same time, I want what Oscar De La Hoya wants, where you know, he wants to have the best fighting the best, and I'm all for it. What Top Rank wants to do, you know, basically, I'm just stuck in the middle. TstreeT Controversy with RealCombatMedia.com. TstreeT Controversy Live.